Red light therapy is all the hype at the moment, but I'm always a bit skeptical when a treatment is being touted as having near magical effects on healing. So I thought it's time to look at what the research shows. Does red light therapy actually work for injuries? And if so, is there a specific device that works best? Should we be using different settings for different types of injury? Because we know different injuries heal in different ways. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Maryke. I'm one of the physiotherapists from sportsinjuryphysio.com, where you can get online physiotherapy assessment as well as treatment of any type of sports injury, all done via video call. Now, I realize it sounds a bit weird to do physiotherapy via video call because shouldn't you be touching somebody to diagnose or treat them? Well, the truth is, for most sports injuries, we just need to understand how your injury started, how it's reacting to symptoms, and be able to see you move during some movement tests. And we can do all of that via video call easily. If you want to know more about that process, have a look at the description of this video. I'll put a link there. When I look at research, I like to split it into two groups. One group, I add all the studies in that looked at animal models as well as individual cells in petri dishes in laboratories. And then in the other group, I like to look at actual humans who had injuries, because we know from previous research into other areas of the body that things that look as if they work really well on animals or in laboratory conditions doesn't actually produce the same results on real people in real life. So let's have a look at what happens if we do that. If we look at the lab studies first, red light therapy seems to work mainly through stimulating your mitochondria, which is your energy producing parts of your cell. Now, your ATP increases, which is a molecule that helps with cellular repair. Also, you see a decrease in inflammation and improved circulation. There's also a decrease in pain, which they think may be due to stimulation of the nerves, or it could also be down to in releasing endorphins. So this all sounds really positive for injury recovery. But let's look at what the research on human beings show. For humans, there is really good evidence that red light therapy works for superficial injuries. So we're talking about wounds, abrasions, especially difficult to heal wounds like with conditions like diabetes. Red light therapy seems to be very beneficial for that. The research into deeper injuries, like ones that affect your muscles or your tendons, is a little bit more mixed. Some of the studies show that patients, when they use red light therapy, have decreased pain, and others show that actually it has no effect. But the problem is, the studies use such different protocols and devices that it may be that the ones that doesn't show an effect just isn't getting an effective dose. But something that all these studies agree to is that it doesn't matter what the approach is or the protocol that was used, these people don't necessarily get an improved function or strength because of the red light therapy. So for instance, if they used it for somebody's patellar tendon, they had decreased pain, so they were more comfortable and they could perhaps do more exercises, but it didn't directly translate into, they could run more easily or they could get back to sport more easily. So it does seem to have a place in injury recovery in that it can help your pain come down, but it's not a silver bullet that you can just use that and then not do your rehab. You can just use it as an adjunct to your rehab and the other treatments that's helping. I quickly want to circle back to inflammation, because one of the benefits that I said they saw in animal studies specifically is that red light therapy can reduce inflammation. Now, you may be thinking, wait a second, you've said in previous videos that inflammation is actually important for the healing process, because we know, like for injuries like muscle tears, for instance, in studies where they've suppressed inflammation dramatically through taking anti-inflammatories, the injury didn't heal as well as with the people who didn't take the anti-inflammatories. So isn't red light therapy then bad for certain injuries because it's suppressing the inflammation? Well, what they've seen in the research is that the red light therapy doesn't actually suppress the inflammation excessively. It just modulates it. So it brings it down to a normal level. And we do know also from research that if you have excessive inflammation or prolonged chronic inflammation, that can actually make injuries worse or cause worse healing. So red light therapy is good for inflammation in the sense that it brings it back down to a normal level for you. There's a really interesting study where they looked at two twins and they looked at how doing red light therapy for workouts affected the one's recovery versus the others. And why are we looking at exercise recovery when we're talking about injuries? Well, because you also get an inflammatory response with exercise that then makes your muscles grow stronger. And there's research to show if you suppress that inflammatory response, then you don't get the same training effect. So they looked at these twins, so they are genetically the same, and they made them do the same workouts, same food, everything else, but they gave the one red light therapy after workouts versus the other one didn't get it. And after the period of time that they tested them, the one had significantly larger muscles and more strength compared to the one that didn't have it. So this again shows us that the red light therapy didn't suppress the inflammation to the point where it didn't do its job that it was meant to do. It just actually helped the whole process that he benefited more. But for me, a treatment is only worth adding in if the benefits outweigh the risks. So what are the risks or the side effects that you can expect with red light therapy? Well, from the research, it shows that actually it's quite a safe treatment. The main side effect comes if you overtreat. Now, I wanted to take note of this because often I find people think, oh, something's good for me, so more must be better. And they overdo their rehab exercises or they overdo the massage gun, and then they actually make things worse. With red light therapy, you get something called the biphasic dose response. And all this means is that if you use too much red light therapy in one treatment on a specific area, and you do that often, you can actually slow the healing process down rather than help it along. So it's really important to stick to the doses that's prescribed in your manual that you're using or that we'll discuss later in this video. And also, if you're going to repetitively overuse it, then it can lead to temporary fatigue as well as dizziness and skin irritation. Some devices can also damage your eyes. Now, I've listened to podcasts where people say, no, they use it without using eye protection, so they think that's nonsense, it's safe. That's a very dangerous statement to make because you don't know what devices other people have. Your device may be safe, but others may not be. And for me, eyes are just too important in my life. I'm not going to take risks. So if your device tells you that you should be protecting your eyes, I would say protect your eyes. It's not going to take anything away from you. Then also some people have photosensitivity where you're really sensitive to light. It might not be a good idea to use it in that case. And some people may be on certain medications that make them photosensitive. If you're on any medication, check with your doctor if it's okay to actually use red light therapy, or check the pamphlet you get with the medication. If it says anything like you should be worried about sharp light or sunlight when you use it, then it might not be a good idea to use it. The other thing is be mindful if you're going to use it over areas with active inflammation or cancer or things like that, then it may actually increase the growth of the negative thing as well. So it may also be best not to use it either on that area or at all, but speak to your doctor about that. There are 3 devices that you could use. The first is low-level laser, and that is supported by the research. It's actually the one that's most commonly used in the research studies. Then you've got your LED devices, and yes, that is also supported by the research and on par with laser devices. Then thirdly, you've got infrared lamps. Now, bizarrely enough, they don't seem to work. They don't bring about the healing effect that we get with proper red light or near infrared, and they also produce heat. And heat is really not good for some injuries, especially if there's inflammation involved. It could cause excessive inflammation if you heat it up, or if you've got bleeding, like with a muscle tear, it can actually increase the bleeding. So infrared lights could be good for reducing pain if your injury is stable later on because it produces heat, but it doesn't bring about the healing effect, and it may actually make certain injuries worse. So the best device is to get either a laser device or a LED lamp. Now, lasers often just have really small treatment areas, so it can take very long to cover an area when you treat with that, and they tend to be more expensive. LED devices are much easier to use, and they tend to be able to treat larger areas. So if you're looking to use red light therapy at home, I would probably go for an LED device. There are 4 that you've got to look at because they work together. The first is the wavelength of your machine, because that actually determines how deep the light will go into the skin. Red light therapy uses red or near infrared light. Red light is good for superficial wounds, but it doesn't go very deep under the skin, so it can help for cuts and braces and maybe things like tendons on the hand. But if you're looking for something to treat a deeper injury, like a muscle injury or tendon injury, it might be better to have a machine that actually uses near infrared light, because that penetrates deeper. Good news is that modern devices often combines the two types of light. Just check what the manufacturer is listing. And I've identified several devices on Amazon that I've listed in the description of this video that do actually combine the types of light for you. The second thing you've got to pay attention to is the irradiance of your specific device. So what that means is the intensity of the light when it actually hits your skin when you use the device at the distance that the manufacturer tells you to use it. Because the intensity of the light determines how much energy is actually delivered to that site. And we need to know that to understand whether we're going to hit the target that we want to hit with treatment and not undertreat or overtreat. I was really surprised when I was looking for devices on Amazon how few of them actually listed the irradiance. The ones I listed in the description, the devices all did list the irradiance. But if there's a device that you really want and they're not listing that, just email the manufacturer. They should reply to you and tell you what is the irradiance in your specific device. The next obvious thing to think about when you're thinking about the settings that you want to use is the exposure time, because you only want to treat it that you get the right amount of energy delivered. Now, the treatment time will very much depend on the irradiance of your device, because depending on how much energy is actually delivered at that point, you may need a longer or shorter period of time that you treat it for. The fourth thing, which should be obvious by now, that you want to pay attention to is the actual amount of energy that you're delivering to the area you're treating, because that will determine the treatment effect. And you use your irradiance plus the treatment time to figure that out. There is a formula that you can use to work this out, but if I talk you through this formula at every single setting you've got to use for every type of injury, this will definitely become the most boring video on the internet. So instead, what I've done is I have written these settings out for you in a PDF, and including how to calculate the best settings for different types of injuries, how many times a week to use it, what dosage to use it, how many weeks to use it for. And we're looking at different injuries like muscle injuries, tendon injuries, ligament injuries. If you go to the description of this video, there's a link to click to download the PDF that you can have it next to you. If you don't want to download the PDF, you just want to see it written down, I've also put it in a blog post. There's another link in the description that you can click to go to the blog post as well. Brilliant. Hope you found that useful. Let me know if you've got any questions. You can just ask them in the comments. I'll answer them. And if you need more help with an injury, you're welcome to consult one of the team via video call. The link to the website is in the description of this video. Take care.